Greetings, gamers, and welcome to Season 7, Episode 2 of Ropai Gamma, the Gamers Podcast. I am your GM Byron, and of course with me is my co-host Howard.
Greetings, everyone.
And I guess this really means Season 7's really going, isn't it?
Episode 2.
Yep.
Hopefully we can do this in one take.
Yeah, I know, right? Last time it took us, 2 takes in, 2 weeks.
Yeah, 2 takes, 2 weeks, and some serious headaches, but we got it.
Yep. So...
You're used to the new recording program, right?
Yeah. OBS. Which apparently I'm finding out, huh?
God bless you.
I'm finding out that, apparently everyone I know is using this program now. Even Liz is using it to record her stuff for her new project for the publisher. So
nice.
Because it records actually in the format they want her to put it in. So that's pretty cool. So, all right. I actually had a couple of different things I wanted to cover this week. We got an article that I don't know if I'm actually going to cover the article, but the article kind of gave the idea of what I wanted to cover, if that makes any sense.
Okay.
And then there's some other stuff, so I figured we'll just get right to it. So, but of course, because I actually kind of like doing this, what have we been doing in gaming? I guess we'll start with you. Anything new and interesting?
Since last podcast, no. My game is I guess technically speaking, since I did a podcast on the morning of my game. Okay, yeah, I guess I did. So, well, it was on the same day, but I guess the podcast proceeded. So, yeah, no, I'm running a scenario or part of a scenario for the global storyline, which is wrapping up this year. And one of the things is that we created a plague. We reintroduced a plague that had affected this world, 1,000 years before, and it is basically 100% lethal to elves. But it's not instantaneously lethal. It's kind of like, leprosy or the Black Plague or whatever, in that when you get it, you eventually fade and die. There are ways of getting around it, but they typically require a massive expenditure of resources, of very limited resources. We will be introducing ways of actually curing the plague in the next arc, which comes out in September. But for the second arc, the one that we're in the process of, since the plague is spreading, we haven't actually even released the cure yet, because we wanted we wanted all the GMs to have an opportunity to use it without some because what'll end up happening, because what I've found is this: if I create a global plague, and then at the very outset tell the GMs, here's a cure. But it's not going to be available. We don't want to be able to find the cure out until September. Some jackwagon, as soon as he gets it, his group will have the cure and start spreading it, and ruin it for everyone else. Because there's always those types of people in every group. You're going to have the trolls, right? That's just the way life is. So
that's just humanity. And actually, one of the other things I wanted to bring up later, we'll actually touch on that. So, but continue.
But anyway, so the way I fix it is that when I introduce these things, I tell the GMs, I'm like, all right, I'm introducing this plot device. The solution to it will not be available until the next story arc, which means there'll be 4 months where you guys can do these things to mitigate it, but you cannot cure it until this information comes out. Outside of a few, MacGuffins like golden bennies and whatnot. Anyway. So one of my players got that. This is the second player to get it, and the first player died and uses one of the MacGuffins to sort of escape death. And this character is now on death's door. It's very interesting that I have a role playing group that's mature enough that I can do that kind of stuff with. That they can role play their character's slow death, because a lot of player characters get pissy about it. A lot of groups aren't mature enough to handle that. Because they just want to, kill monsters, get loot. But my group is a lot more mature about it, and so they take it in stride. They use it as fuel. But the last game we had was, I don't do it a lot, but sometimes, because players spend a lot of time and energy making their characters, super, super effective in combat. And since most role playing games, the overwhelming majority of the abilities and skills and things like that are geared toward effectiveness in combat, if you don't at least have a few games that are
Depending on the class, but yes.
well, yeah, but even the thief class and stuff like that, or whatever you want to call it, or I mean, the bottom line is that most stats in a game outside of skill checks are related to combat. They really are. If you look at the percentages, so if you don't give your players, I mean, if you don't give your players some real combat every once in a while, unless it's a game that's specifically not designed for that, and this game certainly is a combat game, they feel miffed. So I actually gave them a straight up combat game, and it was brutal. I mean, it was they got out, but the end of it, and when I closed down the game, all the players looked like tired and depressed after that one, just because it was 4 hours of, and we did combat for at least 2.5 to 3 hours of the session, and it was like hard combat. I mean it was a long game, and it was almost nothing but them fighting overwhelming odds, and it was beautiful. So that's what I did. I just put them through the ringer. They enjoyed it. You know, yeah, no,
They usually do in your game.
Like I said, I actually have a kind of a formula of the way I go about it. And interestingly enough, and I'll say this, and I'll let you take back over. But I've been watching the anime Fairy Tail. I don't know if you're familiar with it.
Yes. Actually, Liz and I sat down and started watching it. We got to a certain point. We never really continued with it, though. An interesting concept of a world. Actually, friend Tim, part of my Lucky 13 group up here, at one point in time ran a Fate game kind of based off of Fairy Tail. It was actually pretty cool.
Well, what I found interesting is Fairy Tail has, I mean, ridiculous numbers of seasons. I mean, it was apparently an incredibly popular anime.
As far as I know, they're still making it, aren't they?
I think so.
Yeah.
But what's funny about it is that watching, I'm not talking about the plots. What I'm talking about is their formula for the way they lay out, for the formula for the way they release the various arcs. A, they call them arcs.
Okay.
B, the way they actually release it is the same system that I use for my role-playing games.
Really?
It took me 3 seasons to figure it out, but they do exactly what I do. Almost exactly because I saw the pattern, and it is one of the most successful animes as far as length goes, and it's still going. And my games last forever, as you know. So I'm beginning to think that I stumbled across a formula that they stumbled across, because there's a way of releasing your games. There's a way of structuring the games over a long time, which allow them to continue. And when I realized what they were doing, and actually now that I'm almost half watching it to see the pattern develop. But yes, they use the same exact system that I use.
Okay, you and I will need to talk after this about that, because I'm going to need help with that. So yeah, we'll have to cover that. Actually, I might even put it into the game schedule, into the RoPie schedule. So anyway, so anything else, or
that's it?
Okay, cool. So let's see, what have I been doing in gaming? Since last time, let's see, Matt's Karma game went rather well. Actually, it's interesting. Matt's okay. First and foremost, I got to give props to Matt, because although it was originally a joke by a player, he took it and ran with it. And it turns out to be one of the best things I've ever seen someone do with their world. The Karma game for Matt has basically boiled down to, instead of me running something for Matt and Allison, Matt has been creating a campaign world that I've been helping him with off and on. And so finally we're running a full campaign in his world to help him flesh it out. And I don't know if he originally intended to do this or not, but with the character idea I came up with, he took my character idea and basically I'm the plot monkey. The whole the actual base storyline for the whole campaign revolves around my character. I swore to the group I was not aware of this ahead of time because everyone was like, "Oh God, we're gonna have to do this," and I'm just like, "It wasn't me." Anyway, um, so we one of the characters is an elf ranger who, um, in her backstory, she was actually raised by dwarves. And it turns out that one of the things we're looking for as part of the main plot is in a tomb of an of an ancient dwarvish king. So we had to go to the to the dwarvish area, and we decided to stop by and see the character's family, her foster family. She joked at one point because if you know how I don't even know where this got started, but you know how dwarves are usually portrayed in fantasy as Scottish.
Yeah.
They've got Scottish accents, and oftentimes have at least some aspects of like Scottish culture. I don't know where that got started, but it's kind of and unfortunately I am guilty of this too. I try to shake it up a bit, but it's like ingrained even in my mentality of at least of Draco Terramina, my main campaign world. It is ingrained in there that the dwarves are have Scottish accents, da 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 da. Well, the character joked, the player joked about them having like some other accent. Matt took it and rolled with it, and we finally met the family last week, and it was beautiful. He made them Russian,
Nice.
and it was brilliant. We loved it. So like I'm now trying to work like because I've got two dwarvish kingdoms in my main world. I'm trying to work one of them being more, you know, of Russian than Scottish. Just it was beautiful. So um and it was kind of interesting because the character I'm playing in that one um I came up with this character. I came up with this backstory. I thought it was very simple. Um, orphaned, picked up by a circus. Learned that she had an knack for magic. Picked up some roguish skills from the circus, and then decided to go out on her own and become a treasure hunter. I thought, rather simple backstory, but left a lot of hooks for the GM to use. But as I'm playing the character, I'm realizing that she's a lot more complicated than I originally thought. A lot of it from the backstory. So, like one of the things that we were coming to the one elf that was raised by the dwarves, her family, and all of a sudden my character gets very quiet, and even I'm sitting there, I'm like, what the fuck is going on with my character? And she basically informs me that we're basically going to see this one character's family, and my character doesn't have she technically classifies the circus as her family, but she doesn't like her family, and kind of is a little almost jealous of the more actual like good family relation that this other character has with her foster family. So like my character got very quiet. I wasn't trying to like steal limelight from this other character, but it's just, it's just I'm like I didn't even know the character was going to really act like this. Now, thankfully, the one character finally pulled out of me what was wrong and said some things, and my character was like, you know what, all right, and joined up with the rest. So I'm liking the fact that she is at least I'm it's interesting because like when I started playing the character, everyone was like, she's a bit of a dick, but wasn't so much of a dick that everyone was like, oh God, fuck that character. I it wasn't threatening group cohesion as much as a character like that could. So I was dancing a very fine line with the character, and I still kind of am, but I'm rambling and getting off topic. So anyway, let's see. The only other gaming I've really done since last game was last night. And my schedule got a little skewed because of things going on with a friend of ours came to visit, and we had to get up at like 1:30 Saturday morning to go take her to an airport. So like Liz and I had to drive about 3 hours round trip
Yeah, I saw
on
that
4 hours
when
of
you
sleep.
posted that.
So yesterday was very long and tiresome. But I did do some gaming. The game I usually do on Friday night, I moved to Saturday night. Um, and that's my other Karma game that's in Draco Terramina. That went well. Um, I'm having some problems with one player, and I want some input on you. This is actually one of the various things I wanted to pull up to cover for this episode.
Do you want to just go into it?
Yeah, that's to say, it was a nice lead in. Okay, so in that game, I've got 3 players. I've got Miri, her friend Emmy, and Ben, Miri's husband. Which they actually got married like earlier this year, and congratulations to both of them. Rock on. Um, of course, this is one of the Karma games because Miri and Ben helped bail Liz and I out at Gen Con a couple of years ago. Um, and so I was running this game. Liz was originally part of it. She dropped out for a bit. She dropped out, and then that's when they brought Emmy in, Miri's friend from Canada. And that went well for a while. Miri has changed characters since. She's really liking her new character. I am too. We brought Miri's mother in for a bit, but then she dropped out because of some. Um, Miri and her mom have a very, I think the best way I can describe it is a very dynamic relationship. And Miri's mom didn't want to. She felt like she was like kind of stifling Miri's, you know, chance of enjoying the game and role playing. So Miri's mom, they discussed it, and Miri's mom dropped out. Um, which I was kind of sad for because Miri's mom was going to be playing a battle mage, which they kind of need some arcane punch in the group, and then she dropped out. So I was like, well, crap. But I've figured out a way around that. Anyway, um, my problem is that Emmy's character, when I helped Emmy make the character, because she hadn't really done this style of role playing before. She hadn't really done statted role play before. Um, Amy's character, when we built her, I got a really cool plot idea for her backstory and whatnot. She loved it, so we rolled with it. And Miri's character, her new one, I've come up with some cool things going on. Ben's character, on the other hand, like, I'm not sure what to do with. And it's starting to become a bit of a problem. He enjoys the character, but he is self-admitted as being a passive role player, and I thought that was an interesting term that he used because I hadn't really heard it before. But it's a good explanation as to how he role plays. He's one of those that kind of sits back. If he feels like he's got something to contribute, he will. But the problem is that most of the time he doesn't. He
Doesn't do
doesn't.
anything. He just sits there.
Well, I mean, like when it comes to like combat, he's in it.
Right.
It's the role playing aspects that he's really not.
Yeah.
And I tried to do things to kind of pull him out. Apparently, one of my gods, Lunara, my goddess of love, healing, and the moon, took a liking to his character. Don't ask me to explain it. She does this sometimes. I don't understand it. I just roll with it. Just whatever. Now he's playing a monk. And apparently he was trying to go with a particular build, as I found out later. But one of the feats had a requirement of a feat that he can't take. It requires weapon specialization, which is a fighter-only feat for the most part. So he was like, well, shoot, I can't go for that build. I'll go for another. He eventually took the Qijong archetype for monk, which is basically, because you know how monks get a lot of special abilities that is kind of tied to their ki pool, or just a lot of the abilities are kind of like seen as as monkish abilities. What the Qijong archetype does is it allows you to actually customize those abilities a bit more. I remember like someone actually said that technically every monk is a Qijong monk. It's just that your stereotypical monk obviously picks a very specific set of abilities. The Qijong monk allows you to adjust those. And some of them, and like to the point to where like some of the abilities he can take, he can actually do like spell-like effects with his ki powers in place of some of the other monk abilities. I thought that was great. I let him roll with it because he didn't technically take the archetype at first level, which you're supposed to, but it didn't really kick in until he got his key pool at fourth level. So I was like, screw it, you can take it. That's fine. Um, so to give him something more to work with, I had it to where um, my goddess of love, healing, and the moon, like I said, kind of has a a thing for his character. So she wanted to make him a chosen. Now, granted, being a monk and lawful good, he was, his character had picked Cordius, my god of the mind, as his patron. Um, because Cordius is kind of the patron of monks, you know,
Okay.
to begin with. So there was actually some good role playing as to Lunara kind of being very close with the character, and but he had this kind of internal struggle because Lunara's chaotic good, Cordius is lawful good, um, and he didn't know like how her wanting to make him a chosen was going to affect it. Basically, he was kind of having a crisis of faith. And we did role play it out. That he actually met with an avatar of Cordius, and Cordius was just like, basically he's like, okay, first and foremost, she's like a more powerful deity than I because Cordius is relatively new to the scene. But he's like, if that's what you choose, I'm okay with that. I'm fine with that. I mean, it's your choice, um, kind of deal. And so he was like, okay, we role played it out. He became okay with it. Lunara showed up, and he was like, all right, cool, let's go with this. So basically, all being a chosen is doing right at the moment is he now has basically extra favor with her church, and I gave him access to one of her domains. In the sense of he can now cast the domain spells using his Kijong abilities.
Okay.
So basically, he now has he has the domain power, and he can cast the domain spells utilizing his key pool. Um, okay, I figured that wasn't too breaking of things, and it gives a little more healing power to the group because all we've got right at the moment is a paladin. Which, I mean, a paladin can heal, but they're not like a dedicated healer. So, I wanted to make sure that at least we had some healing, oomph to the group because I did have a cleric NPC, but he ran off with Miri's other character. so, um, so I mean, there was some good role playing there, but since then he's been like very quiet. Now, granted, some things have been very stressful in life, and I know that's part of what's been keeping him quiet. His job has been very stressful and very irritating. They had some problems with their plumbing at home. They actually had to like throw away a lot of their like you know pots and pans and plates and cooking utensils and stuff because like shit was backing up into the kitchen sink or some shit like that because something was clogged. Um, so like things have been bad, but like and I've got stuff in. Um, I had stuff planned to be try to more focused on his character later on in the plot, and I'm actually trying to accelerate those plans now. Like I'm changing my timeline of what I wanted things to do to try to because things have been very focused on Emmy and Miri recently, and I'm trying to work it to where I get things moved to be more focused on him because there's actually stuff going on in his home country, and I'm trying to get them to there sooner now, just so it is tried to more focused. But like unfortunately, he's not really tossing me a bone because like he currently like he likes the character, but he doesn't really know what to do with the character right now. And unfortunately, I don't know what to do either. Um, so like I'm in this weird headspace because like I know he's not enjoying the game as much as he could because he things haven't been quite as focused on his character, but he also doesn't really know what to do with his character himself. So he can't really throw me a bone to work with, and I'm trying to throw some stuff out to him I'm having troubles thinking of something as well to try to help spur up that that interaction. So What can you recommend, dude? I realized that was a really long thing, but I had to lay the framework.
First of all, in a number of our previous discussions, we've made the point that you get into a game, or you get out of the game what you put into it.
Mm-hmm.
And occasionally you're just going to have players who, for whatever reason, whether it's personality, whether it's life, whether it's just they're tired, they're not going to put in a lot of work. So in my current game, I have two players. Well, okay. In my current game, I have one player who is combat oriented. It doesn't matter if he's playing the talkie character or if he's playing the tank. All he ever wants to do is bash things with, kill things and bash things. He just doesn't. That's what he enjoys about gaming. Outside of that, up until the last 2 months, he has done almost no role playing. Almost no role playing. He's been in the game for almost 2 years.
Jeez.
Right. Another character who can role play very well. I know that he has in the past, but 99.9% of the time, he sits at the table and says nothing during the game, unless you actually call on him directly. He says nothing. And he only rarely takes plot ideas. Like he majority of the time he just enjoys being part of the group. And what I have, the first thing I would say is what I've learned, at least in my experience, is that some players are just never going to engage like you'd want them to for their own sake, if that makes any sense.
It does. Now he has been more engaging in the past, and I will actually also admit that I probably haven't had as much combat in this campaign as I probably should. It actually has been very role play heavy, and I probably should throw in a bit more combat. So I will state that actually a bit of a reverse of usual. I probably should throw in some more combat because his character is, stat wise, actually geared a bit more towards combat, and I haven't been throwing a lot of that in there. So I am going to try to change that, but continue.
Well, anyway, so different players have different motivations,
right?
And it's basic psychology. So, in my group, I have the combat characters, I have the talkie characters, I have the roleplay characters, I have the let's eat nachos and talk characters, then I have the guy who more or less sits and says nothing for 90% of the games. As a GM, the first thing is try to figure out what motivates all of your character or all of the players, and then try to incorporate that into the game as much as possible. And so if you have 20% or 20% talkie characters and 80% combat, well, then your game should probably feature 20% talkie, 80% combat. I'm not a 1-to-1 ratio, but
yeah,
design the game around because you're providing a service to them. But that being said, and I said that to say this. However, as a GM, you need to understand, and I've learned this is a hard lesson, is that do the best you can to involve the characters or the players. Do your best to cater to the players. Do your best to provide scenarios and situations, to feed them plot points, to talk them out of game, to help them craft their character storylines to be to be as engaging for the player as possible. But also realize that at a certain point you can lead a horse to water, but you can't make them drink. And some people are just never going to engage. And the biggest thing about a GM is being able to get over that, being able to just be like, all right. If you have done your due diligence, if you know that you're introducing, if they're, let's say that character, all that character wants to do is resource build. Let's say they're one of those guys who just loves to, he loves the expansion packs, the DLCs to video games, which allow him to build his own keep. All right, so you give him all the opportunities in the world to develop his own little niche, whether it's a castle, a kingdom, whether it's an empire, trade group, whatever it happens to be. And let's say you've done everything you can to help them do that, and that's the only time they engage, period. The rest of the time, they just sit there like a bump on along because they have no interest in doing any actual role play or combat. They just want to, to hoard their resources like a dragon sitting on a pile of gold. Well, as a GM, you can't have the entire game with other people sitting there focused on this one guy building his empire while the rest of them. So the trick is a GM is do your best, but then also realize at a certain point, the players have to put in as much. They have to put in to get out as well.
Yeah.
So for you, if you need more combat, like you said, great, throw in more combat. Make sure that you're open and open dialogue with the character after the game. Talk to him about after games, talk with him about what worked, what didn't. Help coach him to be able to engage with his character. But at the end of the day, sometimes you just have to, accept that certain games, certain people are going to be like this, and and the best thing is to become a GM that's okay with that.
Yeah.
Not that's okay with a bad game, but it's okay with letting some players,
And I think I could. I think I will. But with it only being 3 players,
it's hard.
It's hard, especially considering I'm doing so much, and my world is just coming up with ideas for these other 2. I do feel bad that because I do feel I'm not pulling my weight enough with his character as I am with the others. And you're right, though. I mean, again, as I stated, I mean, he's not throwing me a bone either, because even he doesn't really know what he's wanting to do with his character, and until he decides that, there may not be much else I can do.
And that's the key. Have a dialogue, and that's really the key, is to be like, look, I've and you can tell him, look, I don't feel like your character is getting enough of the spotlight. I don't feel like your character is getting enough, plot time or attention.
Yeah, and actually,
you appear to not be quite as enjoying it as you could. However, to be true, like, I'm not entirely sure what you want. If he's like, well, I don't know what I want either, be like, all right, man, well, here's what we're gonna do. I'm gonna give you some more combat. I'm gonna continue when things come up. I'm gonna continue to throw them, and I'm gonna wait. I'm going to let you take the lead on developing this character. I'll be here to help you. I'll throw you plot. But, I'm not going to, I'm going to continue doing the game. The games continue going. They're going to continue developing your story. You're welcome to join in, all this sort of stuff. But when you sort of get a feel for your character, when you kind of decide what you want, you let me know, and I'll make sure you get the resources that you need and the time in the spotlight.
Unfortunately, he does tend to be the type of person that, like, he would rather be quiet than voice something's wrong. Like, when he wanted to go Kijong, like, it actually took some dialogue from me to yank it out of him as to what he wanted to do. And as soon as he said it, though, I was like, dude, I've got no problems with that. I will work with you. But even knowing that, it's sometimes a little hard. But I think. But, like, I mean, before game last night, I did contact, message him privately. I was like, hey, I wanted to talk to you about this and whatnot. So I'm hoping that with my change that I'm wanting to do in the terms of gearing things towards his home country, and so therefore should be more focused on him, and to try to throw some more combat in, I'm hoping that'll help. Because, like, I asked him, I was like, do you even, like, want to change characters? Because, like I said, I mean, one of the players has already done that. And he's like, no, I actually really kind of, I really like her. But he's like, but I don't know what to do with her. And I'm like, So.
Well, there's again.
Yeah, there's only so much I can do.
Yeah, so. No, I mean, there is. The third part of that is the long game. I don't get good role players. I make them.
That's an interesting thought.
No. That's what my game is. I tell you what. Put in your schedule, if we can get Kelly Lee, good friend of mine, in this game. Let's get her in this game. Let's get her to talk. And I have a whole list of other people I could call you. She's just the one that first comes to mind. She walked into my game a hack and slasher. Now, she's one of the best role players I've ever seen.
Is she the one that just moved?
Yep.
Yeah.
You got JJ Malcolm, who's the artist. He started, and he never. I mean, for the first 6 months of the game, he didn't even say 2 words in game. Now he's turning into an excellent role. I don't get role players. I make them. I train people. I half of what I do as a GM is to teach people, help them master the craft of being a good PC, and I don't leave it up to chance or divine intervention. Every game I very carefully in a very calculated manner train, encourage. Every time that I see good behavior, I encourage it. I use basic psychological principles. Every time that I use negative reinforcement and positive reinforcement, I work very hard to bring out those qualities in my players that are good, good role playing, good role playing skills, and I do my best to sort of mitigate and teach them how not to do the bad stuff. And look, that's what my game is. My game is a crucible, and it's a training ground. And when you walk away from my table, if you've been there for more than a minute, you're going to walk away a better role player than when you got there. Most GMs don't do that. Most GMs are like, they spend all their time running the game and not actually managing their players or teaching their players. That's what I do, and that's why I'm willing to let a player sit there and not talk for 6 months, because during that time when they do talk, I'm encouraging them. Like, that's part of it, is that there's no quick fixes.
Mm-hmm.
But trust me, after 2 or 3, first of all, after about 5 or 6 months of my game, you're gonna be a better role player. And after 2 or 3 years, people walk away from my game and start writing novels and doing writing music, and I mean, trust me, running their own games. So part of this is, as a GM, if you want to take your game to the next level, the thing is to look at this not as a how do I fix this short term, but how do I train this individual to be a better role player.
Which I'm actually trying to do with in another game with another problem player that I have often spoken about. I'm trying to actually take that to heart with
Yep.
him. In the terms of just not, I'm even trying not to call him a problem player anymore. I'm trying to, be like, not, damn it, stop doing that. I'm trying to be like, how can I help him be better? Because I know he can be better. I've seen it. Just, I'm trying to encourage it more. And I think we might actually need to do a whole episode on that dude, because I think I need a refresher.
Put it on the list. Put it on the list
Yep.
with. But the truth of the
And as
matter
to say,
is, like I said,
if you want, we can bring whoever you want in on that episode too. I mean, I got no
Kelly.
qualms with that.
Yeah, I'd love to get Kelly in. But here's and let me say this last bit, and then we'll move on to the next topic.
Yep.
But the way I do it, they don't realize it's happening. I don't make a deal of it. That's not what it's about. And here's the funny: create a culture of role play, because what ends up happening is it's like a river, and these little streams. And what I do is I begin to direct them into the right direction. There's a flow of the game, and I begin to work with each individual player, customized attention, subtle customized attention without them knowing it. And what ends up happening is the more people are involved, the more players are there, the more the culture becomes a culture of role playing. People get swept up in it, because what ends up happening is we sit down at the table. Now I've got like 8 people sitting at the table, and 6 of them are hardcore role players. One of them is getting to be a good role player. One of them still is, has some difficulties. But what ends up happening is when you sit at the table and everyone, the group, begins to push the role play angle, and then what ends up happening is because at first I'm doing all the heavy lifting, and it can take a long time. But once you have the culture of role play, everyone who sits down at the table, the other players are going to encourage them to role play and are going to respond to the role play. And so it's the whole peer pressure. You create a culture of role play, and then there's the peer pressure is to role play. And so you as a GM are not doing as much work, because the group is actually the culture that you have developed. Because most GMs just assume good groups and good culture just happens. Hey, if I run a quality game, everything's going to work out. Sad truth is that's not true.
Yeah. So that's. I can definitely see where that idea and mentality can be hard for a GM to incorporate, considering what all else the GM has to do, and usually what most people understand is what the GM is supposed to do during a game.
Yep.
So, saying that to kind of wrap that topic up. What else?
Moving on to the article.
Yeah, we can do that. I just remember one other thing, but it's the other thing I wanted to cover is actually so kind of off skew of everything else that I think it'll be best to save that one for later.
Let's do that.
Yeah. So okay. So the article I found was actually interesting, because I was collecting articles during the off time for RoPie, because I was like, ooh, this is something I'd like to read, or like to read later, or but in the process, also like, and it would probably make a good topic for RoPie for next season. So I was actually doing something for RoPie in the off time, just not as much as I probably should have. Anyway, so the website is edthebard.blogspot.com, and again, I'll try to have a link up to this, once everything gets posted, as I usually do. And apparently this was his post for June 1st of this year, so this is rather recent. And it's GM advice: reduce your prep time by doing half the work. And when I first read it, I was like, well, duh. But then on the other hand, I was just like, wait, what? So because I was, my first thought was like, doing half the work, then like, what? Yeah, it intrigued me enough that I definitely needed to read on. And basically, what he's talking about is when you're, doing and when you're coming up, developing an adventure to run. Um, he goes over like what he used to do in the terms of building an adventure, and then what he does now. And I see a lot of like what I used to do, um, and what I do now in what he does, but I also see where I can improve a little more. Um, and because like his first example is he for an adventure he comes up with this whole backstory for it. He comes up with this full map. You know, he stats like all the NPCs. He stats all the monsters. He gets all the encounters all planned and everything. And and of course it takes him like hours to get this one adventure set up. And then he goes over like, okay, this is how I do it now. And it's basically an outline. He just, it's like bullet points. At first it was like, a short paragraph for each thing. Now it's like bullet points on an outline. It's like, okay, location, such and such, situation, such and such, lead in, such and such, Um, and instead of having like this full blown map, he's just like, okay, just a quick description of the area, boom, boom, boom. Um, I like I said, I could definitely learn some things from this. It's part of the reason why I wanted to do this article is because I am prepping for the game we're going to be doing on RoPie. Because I, as a GM, can get very ambitious. Um,
Yeah.
as a person, I can be very ambitious in the terms of what I want to try to do with something. Thankfully, though, as much as I sometimes beat myself up on it, when it actually comes to doing the thing, and if it doesn't, I sometimes it takes to when I'm down to the wire for me to finally make the switch. But I am at least okay with the fact of like, okay, I wanted to do all of this. I can't do all of this. I will settle for this. Um, and I'm thankful that I can do that switch because I know some people can't. Because some people it's like I can't do what I want to do. Fucking, I'm not doing it. Um, and that I see that a lot, especially with artists and and or people dealing with various mental issues, depression being one of the big ones, anxiety being another. They've got this great idea, but if it doesn't come out exactly the way they want to, they just say screw it and drop the whole thing. I fortunately am like screw it, I'll do this quick fix thing. It won't be as good as I want, but it'll do what I need. Um, the problem is that some of the stuff I'm trying to prep for this new game, I'm utilizing Roll20, and I feel that if I don't utilize Roll20, if I don't utilize everything or at least near everything that Roll20 has to offer, and that's also part of the reason why I on the schedule I've got that I want to do a review of Roll20 just to show what it can do and also to start getting the players familiar with it. Um, if I'm not doing everything Roll20 can do, um, or at least utilizing the key points, I'm screwing up. Or I'm not doing as good as I could. Um, and one of the things I kind of started training myself doing during the Epic game was even though Roll20 can do maps well, I mean most of the combats I did do tactically anyway, but like Roll20 can do maps and tokens and all these things. I didn't always utilize them, even though I felt like I should. Because if you remember, some of the maps I just hand drew, like on I didn't have a full map, color thing on there. Was it there was one combat I did in the Epic game where it was you all like drop down from the ship to a fort and we're fighting orcs. I just hand drew the fort. I just hand drew the fort and just went with it. So I sometimes kind of hate when I do that, because I was like, yeah, Roll20 can do so much with its maps and whatnot. I should be utilizing, but like sometimes coming up with maps, it is very time consuming, and I don't always have that time. So, I'm I realize this is kind of going everywhere with this, but I wanted to read and review this article to try to see if there's ways I could try to improve myself in the terms of getting what I want without having to put quite so much work into it. Um, but like what I know with some systems, they do require more prep work than others. Good case in point, D6, I do hardly no prep work whatsoever. And I think that comes from the way the system is built, as well as how familiar I am with it. And the fact that, like, doing NPC stats are, I've got a general idea as to what the player stats are, so therefore I have a general idea as how many dice I should be throwing for the NPCs to make them, a relatively good challenge. But everything is based off of a number of dice I'm throwing, whereas with, like, Pathfinder and D20, there's various other stats playing into it, so sometimes, I find it very hard to go off the cuff with NPC stats or monster stats with Roll20 than with D6. So to me, Roll20 requires a bit more prep work. What two things I wanted to then shoot to you on this was, A, what do you do to try to? I know we've gone over how you structure an adventure and a campaign before, but like, what do you do to still do, what you feel is quality work for a GM, for your players and whatnot in prepping for an adventure, but to cut, what corners do you cut? What time saving tips do you do? Um, and also, as a system, how well can you freeform, go off the cuff with Shinetar and Savage Worlds in comparison to like D20 or D6?
Well, I read the article. I read most of the article. I went over the
It's a
entire
long article,
article.
I'll
It's a
admit.
huge article. I went over the entire article. I actually read most of it. Some of it where he was just sort of re-explaining himself, I skipped just because of time constraints. But
Right.
I see where he's going with. So we talked about the different kinds of GM styles, and he used to be in effect we talked about the conductor, who builds the railroads and like the shiny tracks and choo choo, and all the first part of this article, all I think about when he was talking about this is the path, it's the only path, that's just it's conductor, choo choo, railroading, and that requires a tremendous amount of work because you have to you're basically writing a new module for every game, and that's really what that kind of GM style does. It's a very detailed GM style,
Mm-hmm.
but again, you are writing a module for every stupid game, and then I'm sorry, I don't have the time to do that. And then he went like whole hog the other way. He seemed to be kind of in the extremes where he goes the other way. He's like, well, I just sketch some ideas out, and throw some plot hooks. And so in the latter part, he talks about using sort of the plot hook idea, which is the same stuff that shows up in most core books, where and some actual systems depend on it, like Fate, where you create plot hooks that hook the players into the story, and use that to drive it, being player driven.
Mm-hmm.
As we've decided before, is I don't do either one of those styles. I'm a sandbox player, which my style requires, granted, a tremendous amount of work up front before the campaign ever begins.
Mm-hmm.
But once a campaign begins, it runs itself fairly well, as long as you maintain established points. But as far as in each game session, when I'm creating a game session, what I do is I figure out what my ultimate goal is, what the goal for that session happens to be, whether it's to defeat the bad guy, whether it's to get this piece of information, whether it's to craft this item, whatever it happens to be. And then I figure out, the logical things that they would need to achieve that. I'm not talking about railroad. I'm just talking about, to defeat the bad guy, you probably need to find him first. I mean, it usually helps to know where your enemy is before you go defeat them.
Yeah, usually.
Usually. So, I'm talking about really broad strokes here.
Unless you're some kind of master spy, some other. It's just like, I'm going to send these guys, and then they're going to deal with it.
Well, right, no, but I mean the same thing. It's like if the end result of this particular game scenario is to completing some sort of arcane ritual to stop some catastrophe. Well, gathering the components of the ritual might be important because I mean it really really sucks when you get to the top of the mountain and you're casting the ritual and suddenly find out that you don't have like Eyes of a Newt or something like that, and the world ends just because you forgot to get something on your shopping list. So I have
That was fucking brilliant, but okay.
what?
I said that was brilliant, but okay. That's
So
a good example.
right, no, but so when I talk about I'm not railroading. I'm just like, well, logically, we need to get like, it may be just get to the other kingdom. It may be just be an adventure of like random encounters between point A and point B. Well, I got to figure out how they're going to get there, and or at least what options they could legitimately use. As a matter of fact, when I do like long distance traveling, I actually calculate the various options, and sometimes I give the players a chance to choose just like you do. Like when you want to go when you go on a vacation, you want to go on a trip, you look at the map or you pull up your GPS, you pull it up in Google Maps, and you're like, all right, well, I can go this highway, it'll take me this long, but I get to see these things. Take this highway, well, vice versa. So I do
Right.
the same thing before my characters. Now, but when I'm doing a game, like honestly, what I do is I create the key points because I've said before that the way my game system works is that I set up what the enemies are going to do.
Mm-hmm.
And then when the players come in, they interact with the world, and then after the game happens, then I have to figure out how the enemies respond. But what I do is I create a timeline, in effect, and it's actually a bullet point, but it's a timeline, in fact, what the enemy movements are.
Hmm.
Then when the game goes, then the players begin interacting, because by this time in the game, I already have an idea of what my enemy's goals are, what their resources are, where they're located, yada yada yada. So my timeline features all the crap that they're up to in behind the scenes, and then when the game starts, the players interact, and I sort of run with it, let them drive the story, and they can go off on a tangent. And that's the thing is like and if they decide to go completely off mission, they do occasionally. They go over here. Then when they get back, they find out that the enemy has sacked their city. They're like, well, why did the enemy sack our city? I'm like, well, because the mission was to stop the enemy from sacking your city. You guys decided to go shopping in a nearby town.
Yeah.
The
Yeah.
enemy doesn't stop his plans.
Yeah. I learned. Thankfully, I learned very early on in my GMing career I try not to do very laid out plans.
Yeah.
Because what was it? Any battle plan is great until contact with the enemy.
Yeah,
Because
no battle plan survives first encounter, first contact with the enemy. Yeah,
yeah. So and I feel that that's one of my great strengths is how well I can play off the cuff, and because I always say that the players can throw me a curveball, and that's one of that's one of the type of throws I can hit out of the park. It's actually usually when they straight throw at me that throws me for a loop. um, but because I work very well off of what the players throw at me. So, but like I was saying earlier, like some systems I feel work better with that kind of style over very very well planned out.
well, the more detailed the system, the more minutia and crunchy the system is, the more prep it takes.
Yeah.
It's just the way it works.
Yeah.
Because it's very difficult. For example, Hackmaster or even something like Shadowrun, in a lot of cases, coming up with off the cuff NPCs in Shadowrun. Now, really, really experienced GMs can kind of do it, can kind of, fudge it a little bit. But,
Mhm.
I mean, the more complex the system is, the harder it is because the more stats you're dealing with. Like Savage Worlds Fate D6, you're dealing with a finite number of stats, and they're very broad, which means that, and the margins are somewhat smaller. But when you're dealing with much more complex systems, it becomes increasingly more difficult to just come up with stuff on the fly. Not story wise, I'm talking about stat wise.
Yeah. Yeah.
But I was gonna say about so I'll give you a perfect example. All right,
Okay.
the setting is High Seas Adventure. Take your pick. All right,
Mhm.
your player characters are on a boat. ship, whatever. And
It's
your
such a pretty
adventure
boat
is
ship.
exactly. And your adventure is they're getting attacked by pirates. Okay, so you could have the guy's original system, whereas you're like, all right, here's the player characters, here's the stats, they're going to get attacked. Then the enemies, I'm going to stat out every person in the enemy boat. The enemy's going to attack. They're going to fight for a little period of time. Let someone get the ship combat. We're going to figure out how many turns it is. Then when they attack, all that sort of stuff, right?
Mm-hmm.
So the player characters really are just, playing through a movie that you've written with, their actions being very, very little. His second option is, basically he does a bullet point, plot point. Players get to sail the boat. Plot point 2, they get attacked. Okay, that works too, I suppose. I guess, and if you just sort of want to fudge all the stats, that's fine. Or you look at the way that I set things up is like, all right, by now the ship is already statted. Assuming, in my world, if it's a high seas adventure, I would have spent time on their ship before the game started. Also, since they're on a ship, the world itself defines their actions because, unless they can fly or magically walk on water, they're sort of confined to the ship, meaning that it's not railroads to say that they all have to go where the ship goes because
that's just a fact of life.
Right. And see, this is, and I'm using this example to point out what I'm talking about is the fact is that if the game design is done right, then these certain rails or certain boundaries are established simply by the mechanics or the mythos of the world. All right. With that said, I will probably stat out the enemy captain. If I know that that in this game they're going to get attacked by a pirate ship, I will probably have a pre-gen pirate ship available so I can pull it out, and I'll probably stat out the captain and then just use generic stats for the rest of the crew. But I'll let the battle just sort of go as it is, and I'll just say, in my notes, I'll be like, all right, pirate ship is going to come across them, in the morning, and then they're going to have a series of battles. If they survive, they'll make it to port. If their ship gets sunk, they'll get captured by pirates. And then the next game session, I'll go from there. So I guess what I do is for prep work, sort of in between his two extremes, but I rely on quality world building to define the boundaries of the story rather than it just be whatever prep I do for that game. Does that make sense?
It does. It does. I'm trying to think of how to.
Well, your question though about that is: have you ever looked at the naval stats for Shadowrun?
For Shadowrun, no.
It's insane. So there's a difference between doing Fate. That same pirate encounter in Fate would be fairly straightforward. I mean, and that would be almost. Fate basically is off the cuff, pretty much the way it's designed.
Just about.
Right. Versus something like Hackmaster or something like, or even some of the some of the later D20 systems, or Shadowrun or anything like that. So you are correct. Certain systems lend themselves to more freeform role playing, more off the cuff. The simpler, the less crunchy, and the more crunchy ones require a little more prep work. But even one of those is assuming that you have stats generated for the various enemies that you're going to encounter. The rest of it, that's really all you need for an encounter. Is just the stats for those people you're encountering. And again, if you have taken time to build your world, you should already have an idea, if not pre-generated stats. If you didn't go in and custom create stats for every enemy they're going to encounter, you should at least have no where in the core books are you stats that fit for random pirates. If that makes sense. So
well, it does, because that's basically like for D20 having the monster manual.
Boom. So
but
in that same scenario, you have stats for their ship. You have stats for the player characters. They created their own stats. You have the monster manual, which gives you stats for the pirates, gives you stats for the pirate captain, and you have a basic understanding of ship-to-ship combat. Then your notes for the scenario could be something as simple as character ship gets attacked by pirates, and then let the scenario run itself without having to do any sort of detailed prep work. So long as you have taken the time to invest in the world and the
Okay.
game design.
Okay. So,
Or you could plot it out, like exactly like how the encounter is going to happen, or you could just throw your hands up in the air and when they get there, just sort of just start randomly rolling dice and declaring victory or defeat. I mean, it all depends on your particular style.
okay. Well, but now let me ask this then. What would you recommend if either A, the um God, I'm trying to think of the words of how I want to because I see the direction you're going into, but I also see a direction, another kind of direction that, like, even following what you're saying, there could still be some hurdles. Um, okay, so basically you're saying that if if the system lends itself well, you should be okay to do off the cuff. If not, obviously it needs you need some prep work, and depending on the world, um, it what also is a major factor of that. What would you recommend if, say, what would you recommend if, say, someone was trying to, someone was actually making the world, but this is actually rather frustrating. Um, um, if someone's trying to do the prep work to make the world so that it'll be easier for them in the long run, but let's say they don't necessarily have as much time or resources, is there anything you would recommend to make it a little easier for them, but still be
So
very...
what you're asking basically is what would I suggest if someone came to me and is like, look, I'm going to run this scenario tonight and I don't really have a good world set up and I don't have the stats for my enemies set up, and I only have a bare idea of what I want the characters to do, but they do have character sheets. What should I do? My first response would be like, postpone the game. I mean, they're like, I have no time before, like, my game's in an hour. What do I do? And I'm like, I don't know, play cards. Like, seriously, like, no, that's really what you're like. That I see what you're asking, but it's like
kind of, because, like,
if
even
they have done nothing up
well,
to this point.
well, not even necessarily that, but, like, even like some systems where, like, you do have resources to be able to pull from, like, like, say, D&D with the monster manual. Either, sometimes what you're wanting to do still doesn't fit with what you're wanting to do, or what the players are wanting to do.
Yeah.
Still doesn't fully really fit with what resources you have available, or
Well,
or is something that even the system is kind of going.
well, if you're too ported by the monster manual, which is a legitimate concern.
Yeah.
Because books are expensive, dude. Like,
Oh yeah.
Honestly, in those situations, like, at a certain point, and if someone came to me, I would actually sit them down and be like, all right, honestly, I'm like, and you have to run this game tonight. Like straight up, you can't fake illness.
Yeah.
I'd be like, and then I would tell them, all right, man, then here's what you do. Go with the tried and true random encounters. Like, legitimately, just get whatever stats you can. Like, you come up with whatever, like, before the game while everyone's, BSing. Because, it's going to take them at least half an hour to 45 minutes just to sit down. Because I don't understand it. I'm like, games at 7:30. We usually don't get started until 9 because, first of all, it takes people, an hour. I mean, they trickle in over an hour period, and then it takes them another half an hour just to sit down at the table. So you're going to have at least
that's why during Epic Game, and Allison has been continuing this, we usually set the times like, okay, gather time is at 6:30, games at 7.
Right, no, but you're guaranteed as GM going to have a few minutes, and I would say, all right, take those few minutes. I mean, I'm assuming at the point that you're coming to me, you have an idea of what you want to do, right? Well, yeah, I want them to I want them to get attacked. I'm like, wow, okay. Sure, that makes things easy because, okay, they get. And then I'd say, all right, do you have an idea of what you want them to get attacked by? Like, okay, small creatures. Are we talking about, like, gerbils or kobolds or dwarves? Let's go with kobolds. Okay, I kind of like the gerbil idea, but fine. Do you have stats for kobolds? No. Why are you running this game again? Okay. All right, fine. All right, kobolds. All right. Do you understand? Wait, are you using a rule system? What system?
Okay, you know what, motherfucker?
No. Using what system? Dungeons and Dragons. What variety? D5. Okay, you're using 5th edition. Yes, fantastic. Do you have internet access? No, son of a. Okay. Fine. Do you even know how the system runs? Well, yeah, I've played it once. Oh, Jesus. Okay. All right. You know what? It's a D20. Give them an attack value, an AC value, and a damage value, and give them a number of hit points, and just go with it. How many should I have? Roll D6 plus 2. I don't know. And then be like, well, how do I set up the scenario? Your characters are going from point A to point B. Somewhere in between point A and point B, 1d6 plus 2 of these barely statted out kobolds will attack them. If they win, great. If they die, I don't have to deal with this again. So, like...
So, okay, as ridiculous as you made that scenario, bottom line, you are saying that it does require some prep work regardless. But
you enjoyed that?
I actually like how you're just... it's like, do you have internet access? No, son of a bitch.
Because if they have internet access, this is all moot. Because, I mean, you can pretty much Google any stat you'd ever need. I mean, I do that on games all the time. But there are people, like, where I currently run game, there's no internet access. So, like, that's a legitimate concern. I mean, this poor GM's too poor to buy the books, too poor to afford internet access. I'm surprised he even has friends.
The sad part is I almost am positive that there are GMs that have been in that exact situation. Usually, though, you'll find that those are the GMs that are GMs by default. Those are usually not the ones that necessarily chose to sit behind the screen. Those are the ones that got chosen, or because they're the ones that everyone's like, "All right, you run it." It's like, well, what the son of a bitch?
I would say to any of those GMs out there that are, if you're ever in that situation, go ahead and contact us, and we'll help you with the stats. But you can't be listening to this because you don't have internet access. So I'm sorry, you're just screwed.
Well, no. It might be to where it's they don't have internet access where they game.
Fine. If you're a GM and you're facing this dire predicament, contact us through Ropai Gamma, and one of the two of us will help you build the stats for your next game. Because, like, honestly, I'm sorry though. Like that's you laugh about that scenario, but that's pretty much what you're talking about. Is a GM who is in a situation where you're right by default. Last minute he gets stuck with the game. He has no books, no internet access, and no hope. What advice do you give them? I would just hug them and let them cry on my shoulder. They're there. It'll be okay.
Okay, that was partially where I was going with that, but not exactly. Part of it, I was kind of segueing a bit off of the constructing for an adventure, but like, okay, I think I finally figured out a better way of wording this. What tips would you give in the prep work stages of building the world that would then help more if they did these tips the right way, would help them more down the road when they get to building the adventure than if they were just building the world to build the world?
Well, first of all, every GM I've ever known is obsessed with maps. And dude, how much time I spent on the one astronaut map? I guess I'm one of you guys. But here's the deal.
Well, and I do have a comment about maps and that, but you continue for now.
Maps are great, but they're also incredibly labor intensive. To do anything short of just you put some squiggly lines on a page and say that's a forest. I mean, you can go that route, and that's fine. I mean, remember, the whole idea is suspension of disbelief. I mean, you don't have to have a professional map to make it work. You just have to have the players understand, the relation. We're going through a forest. That being said, you really don't need even maps necessarily to do if you're I mean if you're on a budget and a time crunch. When you're building the world, as I said, always you pencil in as much as you can think of, and it can be something as easy as just sort of a bullet point of the region. What are, I mean, the demographics. What is the predominant race? Is what's the predominant? Is it what's the environment like? I mean, are we in a jungle? Are we in a plains? Are we in a metropolitan area? General population. What's the major religion? That sort of stuff. I mean, if you're doing game design on a budget fast, do you basically build your wherever your setting is, wherever you're doing that particular adventure, almost like a player character. Just get the stats down, the bare bone stats. Environment, location, government, major religion, major races, the things that you would need to explain to people if they were visiting somewhere else. Like so let's say Byron, you're up north and you're sending a friend down to hang out with me, and they're like, well, I've never been outside of my state. What is the South like? Well, what would you tell them the South like? Well, first of all, it's hot.
Yeah.
So dress accordingly. You don't want cold weather gear, especially in the summer. Second of all, there's a lot of mosquitoes, so you're going to want to make sure to wear, take something. You take something as soon as you get there, buy something to cover up, right? They do speak English. They're mostly humans.
Mostly humans.
Mostly humans. Major religion is Christianity of some variety. But make sure that you don't mess up which Christianity you're talking about, because they will try to kill you. And you what kind of music they listen to. Well, I mean, it depends. In urban areas, urban music, and then of course in the country. They name them really well, so it's easy to identify. So honestly, if you're going to build a scenario, just think about it like that. Like, what would you, if you were prepping a trip to some place different than yours, what information would they need to know? And then just write that down on a piece of paper. And then when you get there, like, oh, by the way, you also probably want to name a few places around where you are. There's nothing makes suspension of disbelief harder than, all right, you guys start in a town. What's the town's name? They're not very creative, unless the people are really suck at creating names.
Which is my GM kryptonite.
So, are you there, dude?
Yeah.
All right, cool. So anyway,
you did blank out there for a sec, but
like I said, create some basic names. I would probably, you don't even have to stat NPCs, but you might want to throw in some like whoever's the quest giver. So if the mayor of the town is coming to talk with them, you don't have to give the mayor a name, but it might be a nice little detail to Mayor Smith. And just give some basic information. And honestly, on a budget, on a time constraint, that's all you really need to do. Just enough travel information that a person could get a visual understanding of the world. That's at the core. That's all you absolutely have to have.
Okay. That was going a bit more of what I was looking for. So
I'm glad I could help. Byron, if you ever find yourself in that situation where it comes down to that, I feel so sorry for you.
No, well, I mean, I am generating an area that I'm going to want adventures to go into, but thankfully I've already done a lot of the prep work from the last time I ran the campaign. So.
Well, you know what? You're funny. You're asking about this. The whole game that I'm running for Ricky, the Pathfinder game, it's entirely ad hoc. I have no notes.
How's that actually working? Because again, Pathfinder D20 is one of those that I can't go as off the cuff as well as other systems. And actually, I did ask a question you haven't even answered yet, but I'll let you answer this first.
Remember the question? I'll answer. I'll answer this question, then ask me the second question. The other question, I'll answer it. I take the core book, the Game Master Guide, and the ultimate combat book. I have statted out the one NPC that he travels with, a cleric named Clara. And they're setting in a desert setting, so I just use my knowledge of Arabian setting X, and they're on their way to find. She got separated from her group of clerics, and so she's trying to catch up with the clerics, and he was cursed by the sun god, and so he's hanging out with her because she says that the head cleric might be able to help remove the curse. Done. And then it's just a series of random encounters in the desert.
Hey, if he's enjoying it, then
He loves it.
does he know it's a completely ad hoc?
No.
Well,
And
hopefully he's not listening then.
well, I mean, it wouldn't matter one way or the other. But I mean, literally, I have no notes.
Okay.
None. I have her character sheet and a couple books, and I'm running a scenario.
All right. The other question was in your opinion, how well does Savage World? You kind of answered it, but you kind of answered it in almost in passing as you were answering something else. How well you think Savage Worlds and the setting Shintar works in the terms of working more ad hoc than
Shintar is ridiculously easy to work ad hoc, mainly because of what Sean Fannin did with the core book. You open the back of the core book to the denizen sections, and it gives you a breakdown of nearly every type of creature you need.
What was that? Every type of creature you might need?
Yeah.
Okay.
I mean, if you open the back of the Shintar book, it has the denizen section, which is kind of like the monster manual, but it has all of the stats for every kind of character you would encounter in Shintar, from commoners all the way up to like the higher level. And then if you want like to run an epic level campaign, you buy Unleashed, and that's it. Shintar and then Savage Worlds is Fast and Furious. It's Savage World and Shintar in particular is incredibly easy to run ad hoc.
Okay.
Not only that, but if you don't even have characters, we have an entire section of pre-made characters that you can just print off and run. Kelly's epic character, the one that I keep talking about, the one that just is taking the world by storm. That one, her Brinchy Longtail. Pre-gen. Started as a pre-gen. We changed one ability to give her riding. We changed one minor stat, and she has run for 3 years. A pre-gen character is now one of the most iconic characters in the game, and I just printed off my computer and walked into a convention with it.
Nice.
So there you go.
Awesome.
I cannot do that with Shadowrun though. Shadowrun, no. I need.
Yeah, I remember Shadowrun being very, very, very. Yeah. So, all right. The third thing I wanted to kind of go over, and this is skewing a bit out of our usual sphere of influence, but it's major enough, and with what's going on with it, both the pros and the cons, I think it does warrant being addressed. Have you started playing Pokemon Go?
No.
Okay. Do you intend to?
No.
May I ask why?
3 reasons.
Okay.
A, I've never played a Pokemon game, and I've never even watched the anime. I've seen a couple episodes of anime, but it is not my. I'm not. I find it interesting, but not enough to dedicate the time.
Okay.
2,
okay.
I simply don't have the time. I'm not playing any video games right now. I'm not playing any games at all, other than the role-playing games that I play. I'm not doing anything else. I have books to write. I'm with my kid. The books that I'm writing, and my full-time job at home. I flat don't have the time. Also, with a kid, I would literally have to carry her everywhere I went. And it's 90 something degrees out here, and that means if I'm running around with my daughter, she probably end up getting heat. Like the physics of my situation are not conducive to running around playing Pokemon Go. But the third reason is in fact the most important, and that is the fact is that as soon as Pokemon Go out, I started reading the tech blogs and realized that Pokemon Go is one of the most invasive programs you can download. The quote that I remember is one tech guy said, "Look. The only thing Pokemon Go doesn't have access to on your phone is your passwords. Period."
Wrong. And here's because I know what you're talking about. First and foremost, that was with the iPhones only. If you used Google, and they fixed that once they realized how much level of access it had because they didn't intend for it to. They didn't realize that they. By saying yes, it gave that level of access, and they have since fixed that.
There are patches. That is correct. The best thing you can do to protect yourself is to actually create a game account in Google or whatever, which doesn't have any information, and then running the game off of that, which allows you to use maps and stuff like that. But since it's a blank account and you can create multiple Google accounts, and because I have multiple Google accounts, that's the best way to do it. I'm not saying there's not a way around it, but you are wrong in the fact that if you're using your home account, yes, it is giving information. Metadata, my friend. Crap tons of metadata, because it's logged in, it's logging your location, it's logging all kinds of information. It is a massive security risk. Any free app is a massive security risk. Pokemon Go is worse. Now, they have made some patches, but it's still a huge risk, especially if you're linking it to an account that you're actually using. If you take the step to create the blank account and run it off of that, you're in a much better situation, but it is still a security risk. Any of these free apps are. I'm not saying that that Go is I mean, it is worse in some ways, but I'm not saying that it is drastically worse than these other ones. But most users don't know how to turn off the securities. Most users don't know to create a blank game account. You see what I mean? The other thing is that every time you take these pictures, snap a picture and post it onto social media, what you don't realize is that the metadata in those images actually has time and location data, which any idiot with free software can pull off. And when you're running around your house, posting all this stuff, posting updates, what you're doing is you're giving anyone who would, I mean, I could pick any one of you, go in, troll your Facebook feed, find out all of your Google information, like take your pictures, get the metadata. Then, since you're posting it at the hotspots, as soon as you post the hotspots, follow you in the game, I will know when you're not at home and I can rob you. And you're telling me exactly where you're located and when you're not at home. And you're posting it all online. I can track you either through the app or through your online, because everyone's posting these through social media. Just like pedophiles chase down kids. You there?
Yeah, I'm here.
It is one of those things where it has a lot of benefits, but I think, and it's whenever you have a technology like this, it's like Facebook. Facebook, I mean, how many people out there are decrying Facebook because there's so many security issues with it? And there are. That's why as a parent, you want to make as a parent, I have to be very careful of my child, when she gets older, her social media presence, right?
Mm-hmm.
The thing with Go, though, is it's a phenomenon, right? Currently, right now, Go is like a world-spanning phenomenon, correct? Mm-hmm. Did you hear about the 2 or 3 teenage kids that were luring people into an area, into a park, and then robbing them?
Yeah.
So what I'm saying is, the problem I have with Go is not so much me because I'm an informed user, but one of the reasons that I don't play it is because I'm an informed user. If you're going to play this game, you need to take the steps necessary to protect yourself from the bad people out there. And by the nature of the way it functions, just like Ingress did, it sets you up, it predisposes you to being taken advantage of, either online or in the real world, in IRL, based on your online activities. And I fear that people who are not informed are going to be victimized at a higher rate because of the particular nature of this game. Does that make sense?
Yeah, it does.
So those are the reasons I don't play. I have no problems with people that do. Most of my friends do, and I think it's great, as long as they're having fun and being safe.
All right, fair enough. All right, looking at the time, though, we need to wrap this up. So yeah, if you have any questions, comments, concerns, suggestions, what the fucks, obviously, if you're listening to this, there's bound to be a way of contacting us with it. And we do thank you for joining us this week. Hopefully, you should be good for next week, yes?
As far as I know.
Cool. Alrighty, so thank you for joining us this week. Hopefully you'll join us next week. And I have been your GM, Byron.
I've been your co-host, Howard.
And just remember, the motto of Ropai Gamma is roll high, play well, die hard.
Die hard.